Hello and welcome to this Pride Cymru panel. Hello and welcome to this Pride Cymru panel discussion discussing LGBTQ homelessness. And my name is Rob and I'm going to be the chair of today's programme. I will be introducing my friends here in a few moments, but to let you know, my name is, as I said, Rob. I am a patron of Pride Cymru and I also work as an LGBTQ plus ambassador for Llamau. And with that, I'd like to introduce my colleagues here on the panel, starting with, if I don't mind, Alex.
Hi there, I'm Alex. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the lead worker with Viva. So we support LGBTQ plus young people under the age of 24, or anyone who thinks that they might be, people who are exploring their identity. And we support people across North Wales and beyond, but we're based in Rhyl.
Thank you. And if I can ask Emma to introduce yourself.
Thanks. So I'm Emma Evans. I am the project manager for the Tea Pride project, which is Wales's first LGBTQ plus specific supported accommodation project, and we're based in Rhyl. My pronouns are she and her.
Thank you. And Frances?
Hi, my name is Frances Beecher, and I am very proud to be the Chief Exec of Llamau, Wales's leading homeless charity for young people and women. And my pronouns are she and her.
And absolutely not last or least, we have the lovely Charlie.
Okay, I'm Charlie Harris. I'm a 22-year-old trans man. My pronouns are he and him, and I currently live in Taftswell, sorry.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you to all of you for joining us today. Before we go any further, for those of our viewers who may not be familiar, I'd like to ask Frances, if you don't mind, could you define what homelessness is, please?
Homelessness is a very broad title, and most of us think that homelessness means that people are sleeping rough on the streets. That is a very small percentage of people who find themselves homeless. So young people can be homeless if they're sofa surfing, if they've had a relationship breakdown with their family or caregivers and they are unable to stay in their family home. That is homelessness.
Thank you. And I'm going to start off the discussion by saying several years ago, I found myself in a full-time accommodation, debt piling up, and I couldn't afford to pay the rent. So I actually sofa surfed for just over a year. And I never classed myself as being homeless. And it wasn't until several years later that I realized that I had been, and therefore in a vulnerable position. This is not a position that is exclusive to me. It's happened to many, many people, which brings me on to my first question to the panel. Is it correct that LGBTQ young people are disproportionately affected by homelessness? And if so, why is this? Emma, could I start with you, please?
Sorry, I was on mute. It is the slogan of the year, isn't it? You're on mute. But yeah, thank you very much for that question. So you may be familiar with a piece of research that was carried out by End Youth Homelessness Cymru. It's entitled Out on the Streets, and it was prepared in August 2019, which consulted with individuals and organisations with direct and indirect experience of LGBTQ plus homelessness. The report highlighted that for those LGBTQ plus young people who experience homelessness, it's most often due to their family's rejection or sexual orientation and or gender identity. It's also been found that even in supported accommodation, LGBTQ plus inclusiveness still often leaves these young people experiencing rejection, isolation and stigmatisation from their non-LGBT peers. So a fundamental part of the research of that report was that young people are disproportionately overrepresented in the wider homelessness population in Wales, and their need needs are not well understood by homelessness services nor adequately addressed. And there's a few reasons for that. The fact that there's no mandatory data collection on sexual orientation or gender presentation, and that compounds the situation and has meant really that services have not been designed to respond to LGBTQ plus young people's needs until our project was born.
Okay, I think that's a really, really good overall summation of that. Alex, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think it's echoing similar points that Emma's made. So, kind of having worked with Llamau in the Tea Pride project, we've been kind of sharing these bits of information as well. So, I guess it's kind of with that data collection, as Emma said, we don't really get or have good information at the moment. But there are sort of scant bits of information that we do know that like approximately 5% of 16 to 24-year-olds in the UK identify as LGBTQ+, but of those young people who have experienced homelessness or are vulnerably housed, about a quarter of them in some pieces of research identifies LGBTQ+. So it does show that you're kind of 4 to 5 times more likely to experience homelessness if you are LGBTQ+ or identify that way. Partly because of that, kind of having that part of you directly or indirectly not accepted by your family, not feeling safe at home, or being directly at risk, being threatened. And so having to make the really difficult choice to leave one very intense, unsafe situation to perhaps to experience homelessness, which is not safe, but may at the time feels safer. And having worked with LGBTQ young people for a long time, Viva's been going since 1997. We know that sometimes when these people are presenting and looking and seeking for support, it's not information that's gathered around gender identity, sexual orientation. But even when it is known to workers who are seeking support, that it gets seen as almost a secondary issue, even though it's kind of integral to why they are seeking the support in the first place. So it becomes a kind of a hidden crisis because of that.
Okay, thank you. As somebody who's been through that homelessness period, I can say hand on heart, I have a very loving and supportive family. I'm very, very grateful for that. And they were fantastic when I came out to them. And it was a year or so later when I found myself finding somewhere to live. But because I'd given this air that everything was happy in Robland, I didn't want them to know, which is why I ended up sofa surfing, because I wanted them to think I was coming to terms that everything was fine. And for me, on that part of my journey, it was very much about the facade that everything was perfect and my family didn't have to worry about me. It's how I found myself in that situation. Alex, is there anything you'd like, sorry, not Alex, Charlie, something you'd like to add to that?
Can you just remind me of the question quickly, please?
It's about why do you think LGBTQ people find themselves in the situation where they could be homeless?
I think most of it comes down to the parents' side of it, because I'm sorry. Luckily for me, I actually had a really loving and supporting family when I came out, and like it was absolutely the best. But unfortunately, not everyone goes through that. Most people, when they come out, like their parents could be religious or something, and it's just like, no, we can't deal with that, and they get kicked out, which is, you know, far more common than any like normal like homosexual person just being like kicked out of their house. And I think that's mainly what it comes down to, in my opinion. It's just because like I think most people that are homeless are like kids, do you know what I mean? Like they're at least 30 below, so they have nowhere to go. So it is their parents' responsibility, like what happens to them, and it's then their choice to get rid of them purely based on who they are and what they want to be.
Thank you. So we've established then that there is a disproportionate amount of LGBTQ plus young people who are classed as homeless. So Francis, can you tell us what help and support there is available here in Wales?
Well, there's many good organisations for LGBTQ plus young people. I'm afraid to name too many in case I leave anybody out. But we do have obviously Stonewall Cymru, we have Viva, we have Trans Cymru as well. But what we've realised is that there isn't the number of specialist support services that young people can feel safe and feel part of a community in. Many LGBTQ plus young people have reported to us that when they are in mixed accommodation, it's almost a matter of luck whether or not the people they are sharing that accommodation with are accepting of everybody and that everybody is different. Sometimes they feel that they move into supported accommodation and they still feel that they've got to hide their real selves. And I think that's why Llamau worked so intensely with Viva to ensure that we had the first Tea Pride in Wales. The answer to your question is there isn't enough support. And if we are aware that disproportionately LGBTQ plus young people are 4 times minimally more likely to become homeless than their, I want of a better word, their straight peers, then we should have more accommodation that is specifically for young people who are homeless through no fault of their own. And LGBTQ plus young people are no different to other young people who find themselves homeless. Hardly any of them recognise that they are homeless. They see that the fact they've got a sofa surf, they see the fact that they actually have no idea where they're going to be staying next week because it depends on somebody else's mood and it depends on somebody else's kindness. So I guess my answer is there isn't enough, and we are calling on Welsh Government and local authorities to ensure that over the next 2 years there are a minimum of at least 4 new projects like Tea Pride.
Thank you. And I know that you do amazing work with Tea Pride, and it's well received by those individuals who've been fortunate enough to use them. So bearing in mind that this is all charity based at the moment, how can homelessness charities protect and respect trans and non-binary young people, especially where hostels are probably gender specific? Can I start with Alex on that one, please?
Yeah, so I think some of the kind of builds on kind of what France was saying as well before, is that there are a lot of really good organisations that work with in homelessness, but you're often at the whims of the staff and the other people there as to how much they actually already know. So being able to offer training around kind of LGBTQ plus identities and kind of some of the experiences that they may have, and actually how those experiences, their identity is can be central to why they may experience homelessness, because it can be really important, which I think builds on what Charlie was saying before as well, in that if it's kind of because of having an unaccepting family often, and I think there was some research that showed it was 77% of LGBTQ plus people who experience homelessness was because of their family not accepting. So having that knowledge built in, especially when you come from the ground up, about kind of how to work around those identities and support people in those experiences, what they're going for. But also making sure that it's not an othering experience, that we're not just training about and doing the stuff for other people, for these LGBTQ people. We have special things that we do with them. So one of the things that we talk about is usualizing conversations. So we've introduced ourselves here today with using our pronouns and actually making that part of the culture of a place, that we these are things that we check out with everyone, and that we introduce ourselves with these things as well, so that we're building those bridges as opposed to making this is a special thing for these people over here. And that kind of builds into perhaps like the referral pathways and kind of and assessments, so that these are parts of the things that we're looking with about people, that we are getting to know the person and what that means, to be able to make sure that we're offering any kind of support that people might need. And And I think when you're going to be looking, so to tie it back to the question, like gender specific hostels, that it's actually making sure that those people who are coming in to those gender specific hostels may have different needs than what the people who have built them might expect. So for example, a trans man going into a men's hostel may still need menstrual products and ways to discreetly and privately and sanitarily deal with their products at as they need, and that should be something that is built in. So even when you've made it gender specific, actually really interrogating, well, what does that mean?
Thank you. And Emma, your opinion on that, please?
Yeah, so I think I would echo what Alex has said as well, and I think that the Tea Pride partnership is in a partnership between Denbighshire County Council, Llamau and Viva, and I think that we've been extremely fortunate in this partnership because of the passion that Denbighshire Council have towards LGBTQ+ youth homelessness and tackling all those issues, and it's on the back of that a lot of training and things have been set up. It was one of the recommendations in the End Youth Homelessness report that there should be more training for third sectors, local authorities, so that, you know, that really at that very early stage of a young person who is LGBTQ+ presents themselves as homeless, that they've got that specialist knowledge at that stage to be able to appropriately house that young person. In an ideal world, lots of Tea Prides, but we're not in an ideal world at the moment. We're building upon that. But yeah, I mean, Viva are going to be delivering training to each of the 6 local authority homeless teams across North Wales, which in itself is incredible. And I think that a lot of the work that's needed is to come from education and training, so that, like Alex says, I totally agree with him, that it's not just we're doing it for those LGBTQ+ people, you know, that it becomes a culture, it becomes best practice, it becomes ingrained in everything that you do, you know, as it does in Llamau. You know, we've had gender neutral toilets, I think, for 2 years now, Fran, haven't we? So, you know, all of those things are very much embedded into Llamau, as they are with Viva as well. So yeah, I think in answer to the question, a lot of it comes from training and education.
I hate the term normalised, because I firmly believe that normal is just a cycle on your dishwasher. But I do like standardising and making things every day. And I think that's very important. I'm curious, Charlie, do you have any views or opinion on that?
Well, I definitely agree with what Alex and Emma were saying. Because I mean, recently coming out of school, not only a couple years ago, I would have loved to have been educated more about the whole LGBTQ community, like what there is, and being trans, and how would I put it? Sort of also the sexual side, I guess. It's just the whole thing, do you know what I mean? Because not many people know, I get so many questions going, oh, but what does trans mean? But what is trans, and what's this and what's that? And it just shows that there's not many people that are being educated, and I think that would definitely help with the people that run the homeless centres and stuff, because it's kids don't know it. I think adults definitely should, so then it's not a case of, you know, you go and tell someone that you're something and they look at you and it's well, there's no such thing. It's I get asked a lot of times, it's oh, but you don't look trans. It's well, what is trans supposed to look like?
Absolutely. And I think that's something that I'll happily put my hand up and say I'm still learning and educating myself on as well. That's, I think, is why it's so important for us as as I like to call it, the rainbow family, is to actually support each other. And quite often I think we're very easy to put each other down, to climb on top of. But I thought what we need to do is support and encourage knowledge and growth within our own community family. So thank you for that. The next question I would like to aim at Emma, Alex and Francis really is what work is being done to prevent homelessness in young LGBTQ community, because quite often we'll have heard the phrase prevention is better than a cure. So what is being done to prevent it happening, and what would you like to see from other services such as health, social care and education to help with that prevention? Can we start with Francis, please?
I think leadership is key. What is so frustrating is that Wales could end homelessness and could end youth homelessness if we had enough prevention services. And there's been a great deal of work that is being done on going into schools and ensuring that young people who are showing signs of possibly having a problem at home, services go in. But there are also some other excellent services, like, for example, Upstream Cymru, which relies on young people to tell us what the issues are and where the problems are. And things like mediation, things like assertive outreach support, things that can support a young person at a difficult time of their lives to re-engage with their family, re-engage with their family networks. The other thing I think is absolutely, when we're talking about LGBTQ plus young people and the fact that they are 4 times more likely to become homeless, is that we have to not be afraid to call issues out and to be very, very clear that any type of homophobia or transphobia is unacceptable in 2021. And it is for LGBTQ plus allies and leaders across Wales to take the time to learn, to take the time to understand, and to ensure that their services, where at whatever level you are engaging with young people, whether that's school, whether that is youth work, wherever and however, whether the GP surgeries, sexual health clinics, everyone has a part to play. Everyone in Wales has a part to play to end youth homelessness, and everyone has a part to play to ensure that LGBTQ plus inclusivity is absolutely paramount in their organisations, in their agencies, and right the way across Welsh Government. And I think some of us need not to be afraid to call people out who, I'm sorry, are sitting on the fence about that.
Great stuff, thank you. Alex?
Yeah, and I think that, Francis, what you've been saying there kind of reminds me of a very lovely quote that I've picked up from Amnesty International, that ally is a verb. It's something you do. It's not just something you get to call yourself and sit back and say, I'm one of the safe ones, but that you go out and you're challenging and you're making other things safer. And I think that is a real part of it. So when we're talking about LGBT phobic hate crime and stuff like that, if you know it, if you've seen it, if you don't have to have been the experiencer, but it's still your job, you can report it and things can be done. You can continue to work to make the world safer. I think Emma as well, you kind of gave a little bit of a hint to some of the work that we're doing. So as part of the Tea Pride project, Viva are going to be delivering training for over 300 local authority housing staff from across North Wales. So it's a big project that we're going to be doing over the next 6 months, delivering that training to try and make sure that where young LGBTQ people may be coming into contact with these services, that they know they're going to be going to a place with people with the knowledge, the confidence and the skill set to be able to work with them, to understand them and to support them well, and that sort of thing. And I think, Charlie, you touched on a really good point as well with that education in schools, in that when it comes to LGBTQ plus homelessness, a lot of it is around people's knowledge and acceptance of the people. So having that introduced at an early age, this is hopefully a problem that we are going to continue to work towards solving in the future as we educate people, as people become aware of LGBTQ people at a younger age through the education system, that they will be more caring and accepting adults. And we're quite lucky that we've got the new curriculum for schools, which is going to around relationship and sexuality education, which is going to be launching in schools in Wales from next year, which is LGBTQ plus inclusive from, I think, the age of 3, and it's all developmentally equivalent to what they would learn around cisgender and heterosexual people.
Brilliant, thank you. Emma, I know that both Alex and Francis have covered that quite extensively. Was there anything you'd like to add?
I think they both have. There's never much to add with these two wonderful experts on this panel, but I do think that, you know, progress has been made, you know, over the last 12 months, and I think that certainly we've seen that, Alex, in, you know, in our neighbouring local authorities, and I think that we do, you know, we are starting very slowly to get commitment from local authorities that, you know, there is an LGBTQ plus need, you know, there. So I think that there is some progress that's being made, but I do think that, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day, and I think that you know, more is needed. I think that, you know, calls for action with the local authorities, the government, are needed. Our youngsters took part in a panel discussion with the Senedd recently and posed a question to, you know, the prospective future First Minister, you know, to say we are still living in Wales's only LGBTQ plus supported accommodation. So, you know, where is the commitment from the government to ensure that there are going to be more of these, because we know that the need is there. You know, our project could have been filled 10 times over with the amount of referrals that we've received, and it's shocking and sad at the same time that, you know, the money and the resources just are not there at the moment. So, and it's not for the want of trying. We're huge big advocates of this project, and you know, yeah, we'll sing it from the rooftops. It's something that's very special and unique, but also it should be something that's available all over Wales, and not just, you know, not just in North Wales.
Absolutely. I like that your phrase then, singing from the rooftops. The Welsh are good at singing, so I'm
Yes.
quite sure, you know, we will get a response at some stage. There's only one big question left, really, but I would like each person to think carefully about how you answer this and what you generally feel is true. And I'm going to go around the screen as I see it, if that's all right. So I'd like to start with Alex. What advice would you give an LGBTQ plus person who is struggling and needs help?
I say it's no small question. I think I would always say it feels lonely, but you're not alone. So look for a local group like Viva, a local LGBTQ plus young youth group to talk to find people, to find a community that there will be people who will accept you for who you are and will be there to build in that support, to advocate for you, and to try and make sure that you get the help you want in the way that you want it as much as that is possible. I know it can be difficult to make that first step to reach out to a stranger to say, this is something I've been struggling with and I'm worried won't be accepted. But that's why we exist, because we know it's hard because we've lived through it. Indeed.
And I think what you put out there was a very valid point. There are some people who may be wary of their digital footprint, so they may not want to go on Google, find a safe space, use a library, find a public space, speak to your GP. There are pointers throughout Wales. If you want them, they are there, and there's an amazing group. So I just want to echo completely what Alex said there. So if you don't feel safe asking from within your family home, there are ways and means. So we can help you, we can get to you.
Incognito browsing.
Yes, delete browse, delete history. Francis?
What I'd want to say to any young person struggling out there is the first thing is that you are okay, you are special, and you are wonderful, and do not change. Wales and our entire country is stronger and better the more diverse we are. And just remember that the problem is not with you. We still have a long way to go to educate others, There is a homeless helpline run by Shelter and Llamau. Just look up Shelter, look up Llamau, and that number is there. You will be connected and we will find you the help and support that you need. But please don't change, we need you.
Thank you. Emma?
Totally echo what they've both said again. These two wonderful people that go before me for these questions. But I think, you know, just to add that, you know, please don't suffer in silence. I think, you know, we find, you know, especially with digital footprints and things like that and difficult situations at home, I think please do get the courage to speak in schools. Schools are so much more aware now of, you know, the need for there to be a safe space for young people to share these things. So I think please take that leap of faith, you know, and have that discussion, because it can save your life.
Absolutely. And I think finally, Charlie, if you don't mind taking a pop at that as well, I'd be very grateful. What advice would you, as a young person, what would you give to your peers and to other LGBTQ plus young people who may be struggling and need help?
From someone that's been almost homeless myself, and the fact that I moved from England to Wales not like only like a year or so ago, I've managed to find help that I needed, because surprisingly, considering there's not much in Wales, there's still more here than there was up in England, I'm not gonna lie. And, you know, if you need help, it is out there. You know, you might not think it. I didn't think it, especially when I came out as trans. I had no idea what to do. I didn't even know how to change my title by Dpol, but I managed to find people that would help me. And now, give it like a year or so, I've known so much more about my whole transition. I feel a lot safer in my own house. Like, I've literally, it didn't take me long to get a place. Like, it will happen. You may not think it will, but it definitely will, and it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. You just gotta believe it will happen, and it will happen.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And if you're watching this or need to get hold of some helplines and contact details, they'll all be available at the end of this broadcast and on our relevant websites. And with that, I'd like to just say a big thank you to Francis, to Alex, to Emma, and to Charlie for sharing their time and words of wisdom with us today. And on behalf of Pride Cymru and Llamau and Viva, thank you for joining us.